Hello and welcome to our grade 11 presentation. My name is Dr. Hinchy, and with me today is...
I'm Mr. Forrester.
And today we're going to go over the first of a series of presentations delivered to grade 11 students about the process of sort of a student's journey for the university and careers process. The general outline of this presentation will be for all of our students. So regardless of where students are planning to attend university, this will be useful to you. However, when we start talking about specifics, we will generally talk about the US and the UK in a majority of times because about 80% of our students do end up applying to either the US or the UK. But just a reminder that we do work with students who are planning to go to university around the world. So the philosophy in our office is that we really stress for the idea of fit. So we want students to identify universities that are a good fit for them. The idea of fit in our office means it's the mission of the College Counseling Office to assist students in finding the right fit. Fit is defined as finding an institution that meets the academic, emotional, geographical, and financial needs of the student. Just because a student can get accepted to a university doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right university for them. So the goal of this presentation is to help students identify the resources that are available to them to help them identify what universities are the best fit for them. So like we just mentioned, some of the things that students look for in the university process are things such as simple things like geographic location. Many students will also be focused upon what courses they want to study. And we'll see later in the presentation that some universities require students to apply directly to a course when other universities don't have that same requirement. Students are often interested in things like the setting. Is it an urban setting or a rural setting? The size of the university and the size of classes. How selective a university is. The financial barriers, sometimes the financial opportunities that universities present, extracurricular activities, housing, facilities, and the list goes on and on. Whatever is important for a student will help them dictate what that list is for them. Now, we do this in a number of ways. Obviously, here in our office, in the College Counseling Office, we have lots of resources available to students. The college library, which is just behind us here, has lots of books and university-specific materials that students are always welcome to come and read at any time that they want. Also, they have their college counselors. We are here. We've been working with students on this process for years, and we are hopefully a wealth of knowledge to your students that they can come and talk to us about this process. Additionally, there's a ton of virtual information out there. So we have virtual visits that happen almost daily this time of year. All of these visits are listed on Power School Learning, on the bulletin boards around campus, and on the weekly newsletter that gets sent out to students. So those are opportunities for students to speak directly to the university representatives to get an idea of what universities have to offer their students. Additionally, if students have the opportunity to visit a campus, they can go on university tours. But if that's not possible, there's a lot of web-based research that students can do. And here are just a few of the resources that we mention here. Bridgeview, which we'll talk about later in this presentation. College Board, which is another search tool. Princeton Review, CampusReel, and UVisit. These are all resources where students can get tours of campuses. They can see the statistics of how students are accepted or not, and just a wealth of knowledge that students should be using to help them identify what universities they may be interested in. Additionally, we will include a few links to these resources in the video description of this video. Other resources that are available to students is a process called Morrisby. Morrisby is an interactive platform which helps students make better informed decisions about subjects, courses, careers, and apprenticeships. Other options are open days and taster days. These happen on university campuses for the most part, but they may be virtual this year depending upon the university. And it's an opportunity for students to get a better view and see the universities through a different lens. So if students have the opportunity to visit campus, to see them in an open day or a taster day that is specific to the course that they may be interested in, that is always a great opportunity as well. And last but not least, but we have a very extensive document folder on Power School Learning. So if you're not familiar with the Power School Learning page, the College Counseling Power School Learning page, I recommend that everyone take a look at that. There's lots of information there about how to look for universities, extracurricular activities that students can get involved with, to-do lists depending upon the grade year. So take a look at that, read through it, and then you'll hopefully find lots of information that is useful to you.
So considering that there are a large number of factors to be considering while you are doing your research, it's very easy to get lost in the information. So it's really important to have a record of that information kind of stored and collated as you're going along and about your research. So what you've just seen there is an example of one such kind of resource. It can be as simple as creating an Excel sheet, and you can create your own columns according to what you find is the most important thing for you to be considering as part of your search for different universities. So in short, create or use a resource that we have to help with your research in order for you to kind of document what the entry requirements are for some courses, what kind of sports they have available at certain universities, whatever it is the most important factor in your decision, please include that in your columns and then make some notes as you're going along with A, your tours, and B, your research. Now, discussing research, one of the best go-to resources and first go-to resource for you to be looking at is the Bridgeview platform. So students would have received an email with the Bridgeview link in there. It may look like initially a spam email with kind of like a red text box saying post something, but at the end of the day, it isn't a spam email, and it's one of the most important links that you'll see all year. So click on that and then you'll be taken to the Bridgeview platform. Once you're in the Bridgeview platform, you'll be asked a series of questions to develop a profile, your own personal profile that is attuned to you and your academic achievements to date so far, as well as a range of questions that will ask you the areas, geographical areas that you're looking to apply to, as well as what type of size institution you're looking for, what style of delivery on the courses in which that you are wanting to embark upon. So there's a whole array of different questions which take into consider your preferences on that profile filling section in Bridgeview. Then what will happen is once all of those questions are complete, the next tab down is click for your university matches, and along you'll see a whole array of different universities with all of the associated information you need in helping you with your research within those universities. So you'll have 3 columns of universities inside the Bridgeview platform. The first column on the left side will be your reach universities, and the idea of reach universities will be discussed a little bit more later on, but it's important to have something aspirational to work towards that may be academically a challenge to work towards. So that would be the reach column. The next column would be your match column. So according to what you've put in your profile as to what you've been achieving academically to date, that will then align which universities are best academically matched according to what you have put into the profile. So those match ones are ones that are still a bit of a challenge to get into, but more in line with what you've been achieving. And then finally, the one on the right-hand side will be the column for safety schools. And safety schools are just that, those that will be particularly easier to get into and good to have on your application. So when you are in this tiled, there's 9 universities in a tile, and you'll be able to then open up each individual university, have a read and learn a little bit more about the university. You can even take notes while you're in there as well. There's a note-taking function, as well as having links to the university website itself as well. Now, while you are in the research phase and looking at a particular individual university, you will then be able to look at how your preferences align with what the university has to offer, as well as look at how your academic achievements to date aligns with the entry requirements that they have at that university. Based on this bit of research, looking at the culture then of the school, looking at the facilities that they have available through their website, you can then make a decision on whether or not you want to keep and put that in your shortlist, or if you want to discard that university. When you discard universities in the Bridgeview platform, what will happen is you will then have new suggestions popping up, repopulating those tiles in that tile of 9. The idea is to go through as many different universities as you can at this stage to learn as much as you can about all of these different universities. So really it's a very powerful tool that's going to be used in your search, as well as a very important tool because it's a place where when you actually decide from your shortlist to put specific universities into the application section, which you'll be doing next academic year, then what will happen is we'll be then able to upload documents there, like your transcripts and references. So it is an essential tool for you to become very accustomed to be using. So please get to work on identifying what universities are of interest to you through the Bridgeview platform. So often students will ask, well, how many applications can I make? So if students are looking to apply to the UK, using the UCAS system, which is the UK's centralised university application system, you will find that you have the option of choosing 5 courses as a maximum. And if you're applying to medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine or sciences, you will have the ability to choose 4 courses within those fields, plus 1 other non-medicine related course. So the UK, 5 university choices. If you wish to apply to the UK and the US, that is also an option to you because we often do help support students to apply to multiple destinations. If you're looking to apply to the US only, there are no restrictions. However, we do suggest that you don't overburden yourself with too many applications because the US systems will require you quite often to write supplemental essays. So these additional supplemental essays are also on top of your US Common App essay, which we'll be discussing a little bit more further later on down the line. But just bearing in mind that there'll be additional essays for some colleges in the US, as a result of that, we do look to limit amount of universities that you apply to make it more feasible for you to be able to apply to those colleges. So we say about 1 to 2 reach schools, sometimes 3, 2 to 3 realistic match or target universities, and 1 or 2 likely schools which are safety schools. Obviously, as I said, there's no restrictions, but managing your workload is also key, especially when you come to the application time at the beginning of grade 12.
In later presentations, we'll go into detail about the different application processes per country. But as a quick highlight, we wanted to show you 2 different application processes, the United States and the United Kingdom. Both are pretty different from each other. So for example, the United States, looking at that, it's what we call a decentralized system. So basically what that means is that there are about 4,000 universities in the United States, and all of them could feasibly have their own application system. Thankfully, that's not the case. Many adhere to what they call the common application, which is a single application that allows students to apply to many different universities. But some will have their own specific application for their own university. Other application systems include the coalition application, which is another application similar to the common application. And then other systems, such as the University of California system, will have their own application process. As part of the process, students are required to get teacher recommendations. The college counselor will also write a recommendation for the student, and students will have to write at least one essay as part of the application process. We'll talk about those in a little bit more detail later on as well. Now for the UK is a bit different. The UK is a centralized system. As Jeremy has previously mentioned, we adhere to the process using UCAS. So UCAS is a centralized system which all applications are filed. It is an online application, and students will use a buzzword which we'll give them later on this year. The application itself is fairly straightforward, and we'll release another video about how students can do that application. But as part of it, students will write a personal statement, and the reference letter is written by the college counselor, but it's using the input from the teachers. So during this system, they only get one letter of recommendation, but it's using all different parts, college counselor and teacher recommendations. Students should also be aware that even though it's a centralized system, there may be different requirements based upon the course. So there may be additional testing that's required for some of these courses or for some of these universities. Some of the requirements for universities will be different testing requirements. We do encourage all of our grade 11 students to think about the possibility of taking the SAT and/or the ACT before the end of the academic year. There are some students who will not actually need this, but it is valuable to have just in case something changes. For example, if students change their mind about which country they want to study in, or they change their mind about what qualification, whether they're changing from IB to AP or something like that. So it's always good to have a backup plan. Now, for some students, the SAT and/or ACT will be required. Many times this is for US colleges and universities, but it could be required for other places. For example, sometimes here in the UK, if a student is doing the AP curriculum, many universities will also look to see that students have taken an SAT exam. So that is why we generally encourage all of our students to sit the SAT and/or the ACT before the end of the academic year. Now, to prepare students for that, all of our students in 10th and 11th grade are given the PSAT, the practice SAT. That happened this year on the 14th of October, so just a few days ago, and results will be distributed to students in either December or January. These results will really help students to practice for the real SAT that many students take in the second half of grade 11 and then possibly again in the beginning of grade 12. Moresby, like we talked about before, all students will have taken the Moresby by grade 11. If they have not already done so, they will get a chance to do that in grade 11. Speaking of the SAT, there are two different versions. So the SAT, the reasoning test, is the main test that most universities, if they ask for it, then that's what they're looking for, the SAT. Now there's an SAT-2 or SAT subject test, and not all universities, especially those in the US, will require these tests. They are for a select number of universities, but basically what it is a 1-hour test in a specific subject. So students will need to do some research about whether or not the universities they're interested in require the SAT or the SAT-2 or subject test. If a student wants to register, the way that a student will do that is through the College Board website that you can see there, and you can check for all the dates and availability on that website as well. ACS Cobham is a testing center for the SAT. However, we do recommend students register early for these tests because we are an open test center, which means that students from outside of ACS can also register to take the test here. Another test that students can take, and this is primarily for US students, is the ACT. It's another university entrance exam. We are not a test center for the ACT, so students, if they want to do that, will have to find an external test center. But they can find the test center and register on the ACT website, which is actstudent.org. Sometimes students are required to show that they have English proficiency to attend an English-speaking university. If that is a requirement, students may have to take the TOEFL exam or the IELTS exam, and this is something that can be discussed with their college counselor as well. Finally, there are other tests as necessary. For example, if some students are applying to Oxford or Cambridge or certain courses here in the UK, they may have specific university entrance exams that they need to take, and they will find that out when they're doing their research about the university courses. Here at ACS Cobham, we do offer an SAT prep course, which happens in the spring. It begins in January, and an additional informational email was sent with how to register for that course. If your student does need more information, please have them stop by the College Counselling office.
So if we were to look at the bottom image on this next slide, you can see a range of different flags and then a bit of a continuum here, where we've got the more specialised type of university systems on the left and the more exploratory style systems on the right. And this really does help to summarise in general how the universities in the different countries are in their approach to undergraduate studies. So the UK is a very specialist style of university system where students will need to pick a specific course from year one onwards. Whereas we've got the most exploratory type of university system, which is the US, which is on the right-hand side, which enables students to have a range of different courses, irrespective of what major they may or may not decide, and they can go there undecided initially and then slowly over time narrow down on their choices before they choose what their specialist area will be. So you can see that there's a range of different systems with the different countries and areas somewhere on the spectrum between the most specialised on the left and the more exploratory ones on the right. So we can see that Canada is a little bit more exploratory in its nature, affording students at least a year to explore a range of different courses at the beginning. And then you can also see that the Asian countries, such as Singapore and Japan, on the left side will be a bit more specialised from the onset of the course. So what are these schools or universities looking for? They'll be looking at your predicted grades if you're applying to the UK. And if you're applying to the UK with APs, which is possible, which is often a source of concern with some students, they will look to see what you got in your APs at the end of grade 11, as well as what you're predicted to have at the end of grade 12. So as you are going to be applying in grade 12, you will have some schools already available to you if you're applying with your APs. With students that are applying with IBs, they would not have taken any final tests by the time they're actually applying. So this means that they need to apply with their predicted grades. And there'll be more about predicted grades and the process later on in the year. So each course students take will go onto their transcript. So the student's transcript will display the grades the students have been gaining from grade 9 through to grade 12. So universities will be looking at transcripts as another means to see how academic attainment has been achieved. In addition to this, a GPA, however, the GPA is actually calculated with grade 11 and grade 12 courses only from ACS. The university can then look at the transcript and create their own GPA equivalency or structural methodology from there based on what you have gained from your transcript. Universities will be looking at how rigorous the content of the courses that you have chosen are. So IB and AP courses are particularly rigorous and they're deemed this way by the universities. If you are choosing courses that are academically rigorous, universities will look at this. Also, extracurricular activities are important as well. So what are you doing within your community? What sports are you doing? A whole array of things that you can be involved in the ACS community and outside the ACS community can be shared with the universities as part of the application process. And more on how that is done will be addressed later on in another meeting nearer to the time when we need to be concerned about that. But the main message now is to get involved as much as you can and start working on developing transferable skills within each extracurricular activity that you embark upon. Another area that universities look at is work experience. So From work experience, you get a good idea on how the world of work works, but also, once again, you have the ability to develop some skills that can then be taken to university. So universities, therefore, are very interested in hearing about this. The idea here is to be as reflective as possible on your experience within work as well. Also, they'll be looking at the counsellor and teacher recommendations or references. So with the UK, as previously mentioned, the counsellor will be combining what the teachers have been writing about you alongside what the counsellor has written about you. And for the US, you will have a specific counsellor recommendation, letter of recommendation, as well as specific teacher recommendations. As well as, are you able to demonstrate your interest in the particular university or the course? If you're applying to the US colleges are very keen to see how you have demonstrated your interest in them as an institution. In the UK, very interested in seeing how you are demonstrating your interest in specific subjects that you are applying to. Here's a list of things that you can be considering and working towards now in order to make sure that your application can be as strong as possible when it's time to apply. So, what's happening from now onwards for the rest of this academic year? Well, there are a series of touch points where we get to help the grade 11 students as well as talk to grade 11 parents as well. Here you can see the upcoming events that we have already planned, and these are also in addition to the individual one-to-one counsellor sessions that we encourage to start happening on a regular basis from January onwards. So on November 10th, you can see that there is an after-school workshop which will be focusing on interview techniques. We have January the 13th, we have an overview in advisory on both Moresby and Bridgeview. This will be there and designed to support students who are either struggling to use the platforms or to learn how to use each platform in a more of an advanced manner. Additionally to this, we have January the 19th, where we have an additional grade 11 parents-student presentation, where we'll go into more depth over what things we are going to be doing for the rest of the year. And February has a University of Surrey UCAS fair, which the date is to be confirmed, but it is really a good opportunity for students to learn more about universities within the UK outside of Bridgeview. February the 24th, we have a grade 11 meeting in advisory, and March, an Oxbridge Student Conference. This year, we'll be hosting a virtual university fair where we're going to be inviting universities from across the world, North America, Europe, UK, and last year we had interest as far as Asia and Australasia as well, so we'll be encouraging that to happen again this year. So look out for more details about this fantastic event later on in the year. And as always, pay attention to announcements on Bridgeview, as well as the College Counsellor PSL page. And on the PSL page, there is a complete list of university virtual visits that are happening throughout the year. This is also another fantastic opportunity to learn more about the universities that you are researching. So we have a series of deadlines as well that are coming up. These are the ACS Cobham deadlines, not university deadlines. And if you meet these, you will meet all your university deadlines. You'll relieve stress and worry, and you will also give us enough time to do our administrative side of things, such as writing references and chasing up what needs to be chased up. So when you are in grade 12, your UCAS application deadline for applying to Oxford, Cambridge, or medicine, dentistry, or veterinary sciences will be October the 9th. That's in your grade 12. So you've got all of this time to do all of the things that we've discussed to make your application as strong as possible. October the 20th is when we start looking at the early decision, early action applications for the US universities, and also any other November deadlines in the US, such as the University of California platform as well. So the UC universities, University of California, have a deadline which is relatively early and its own specific platform to apply to outside of the Common App. December 1st is the main deadline for the majority of students, whether or not they're applying to the US or the UK. If you are not applying to the US or the UK and you are looking for other locations such as places within Europe or further afield, the idea is to be aware of when your specific deadlines are yourself, discuss this with your college counsellor, but also to work towards the December 1st deadline as well. In the US, there's also something called rolling applications, which means that there are applications to some universities that continue throughout the year. However, by embarking on one of these applications, it is best if you get this done as soon as possible. Please be aware of all of these deadlines. There are now some US, Canadian universities with earlier deadlines starting now as well. In addition to this, once you've had your initial meeting with your college counsellor, you'll be given a pledge form for you to fill out, as well as a parent questionnaire and a student questionnaire or self-reflection form. These are to be completed as soon as possible and get these back to your college counsellor as soon as possible.
Finally, we just wanted to go over some lessons from the past. It's reassuring to know that your son or daughter is not the first to go through this process, and that everyone, if they want to go to university, can go to university. If you follow the simple procedures that we've lined out, it will help them through this whole process. But in general, looking at some of the lessons from the past, we've heard from students that starting early is the best process. Get the most out of your junior year. Later this year, we will go into the English classes to help students begin the process of writing essays or personal statements. We will also have an assembly later on this year to go over the process of asking teachers for letters of recommendations. Also throughout this year, students should be attending virtual visits or in-person visits to universities and working on the short list of universities that students are looking at. As Jeremy previously mentioned, deadlines are extremely critical, and students should be aiming to follow them. With the essays, we are here to help students. Also, their English teachers are here to help students, so submit early versions to help proofreading. As Jeremy also mentioned, consider early action or rolling admissions on applications if universities have these deadlines. So if a student wants to apply early and find out early, that's always a good way of applying if they're ready at that time. In general, don't wait until the last minute. This is a process that takes lots of planning. So the more students can do throughout this year, it will really help them. And one lesson that students have learned is that Morrisby really helps throughout this process. We've talked about Bridgeview quite a bit, and we've talked about Morrisby. So students have looked back and said, use Morrisby. It really helps, especially in the form section. And finally, keep your grades up. Students should know that grade 11 is probably one of the most important years. If they're looking at US-based universities, this is the last year that US universities can look at the academic ability and achievement of a student from their academic transcript. If they're applying to the UK or someplace else that requires predictions, the teachers will use grade 11 grades to help base their prediction off of. So grade 11 is extremely important to make sure that students keep their grades up. And then finally, I want to reiterate that we are here to help the students through this process. We are not here to do this process for them, and neither should the parents be here to do this process for them. But we are helpful. We are here to communicate with students as much as we can. So the more that students can communicate with us, the better this process will be. So finally, I just want to reiterate that together, we can help the students through this process. This is not a process that is done by the college counselor or by the parents. This is an independent process done by the students with the support of their teachers, with their college counselors and their parents. It's very important to keep the lines of communication open between the college counselor and the students and the parents. The more that we are able to help your students, the easier this process will be for them. However, with that said, right now in the process, our priority is working with the grade 12 students. So It's a very busy time for grade 12 students right now, so if you do request a meeting, we may ask you to postpone that meeting a few weeks until we get the applications sent off for grade 12 students. So if you have a question, the first port of call is probably the PowerSchool Learning page and this presentation to answer general questions that you may have. If you do have more questions after that, you can contact us and our email addresses are there, but we may ask you to wait until after our December 1st deadline to have a meeting. After that time, our full attention is really turned towards the grade 11 students to help them through this process. So that's about it. As we said, we'll have another one of these presentations that takes place in the springtime, starting in January, and we'll be meeting with your students individually starting in January. So if you do have any questions in the meantime, feel free to get in contact with us. But if not, we look forward to seeing you at our next presentation in January. Thank you very much.